The girl was still sound asleep, but her body was slowly sliding down. Below her was 1,000 meters high. A fall from this position would have been fatal. She woke up instantly, but it was too late. She could only let her body tumble towards the endless abyss. Then something unexpected happened. She slowly opened her eyes, but her pupils suddenly dilated. She suddenly stood up and grabbed the rope tightly, her heart beating nonstop. Only then did she realize that she was 10,000 meters high in the air, and she only relied on the hemp rope in front of her to avoid falling. She tried to call for help, but she curled up in the basket and said nothing. What was even more terrible was that the ice on the rope was slowly melting. The girl fell down bit by bit because it was too slippery. Falling from this height would hurt her. She desperately swung her legs to try to get back. After continuous efforts, she finally approached the hanging basket. The girl kicked with all her strength, and then her body was bounced far away. Finally, inertia hooked her to the rope. The girl stared at the man in the corner and used all her strength to flip into the hanging basket. Before she could catch the rope, she crawled towards him, calling out to the man over and over again, but she thought it was too late. The girl couldn't believe it and slowly approached. She had no heartbeat. Just when she was about to despair, the man miraculously woke up and looked at her. The girl's bruised hands and the hot air balloon, now back to normal, knew she had closed the valve by climbing to the top. The two survivors excitedly discussed their future, but before long, they suddenly realized the falling snow had stopped, and finally, as if under a spell, began to float upwards. The girl realized it wasn't the snow that was causing the problem, but the balloon's rapid descent, catching up with the falling snow. At this rate, they were bound to be smashed to pieces. She yelled at the men to throw everything out, ribbons, rescue ropes, and even some of the valuables, as lives were at stake. The man threw out all the coats, but the balloon continued to descend faster and faster, and the baskets were already empty. They were about to fall to their death, so the man asked the girl to climb onto the ring, and he followed with a dagger, wanting to cut off the heaviest basket. Unfortunately, this still didn't slow them down, and as the man's hands moved faster and faster, the baskets were cut one after another, until only two remained. As the ground got closer, the man became more and more anxious. Unexpectedly, one of them lost his grip and they both nearly fell. The girl hadn't expected that the usually elegant-looking nerd would actually hold on at the critical moment. The last rope was cut, and the hot air balloon slowly slowed down. But the experienced girl knew that this was not enough. The speed was still too high. There was no way the two of them could survive at such a high distance. Under the man's surprised gaze, the girl resolutely stood on the edge of the iron ring. She was going to risk her life to buy the man a chance to live. The man collapsed and asked her to stop, but she could not stop the girl who had made up her mind. At the critical moment, looking at the balloon, she suddenly thought of something. There was no time to explain to the girl that it was either they would die or they would live together. Before the girl could react, she grabbed the rope that fixed the balloon and cut it with a knife. The hot air balloon instantly turned into a parachute and slowly fell. The two people who had walked through the gates of hell could not hide their inner throbbing. Before they could celebrate, new trouble came again, but this time, the two were no longer afraid. They held each other's hands and dived into the forest fearlessly. After an unknown amount of time, the two finally woke up, rushed towards each other, and then supported each other and walked towards the direction of the quarrel.